haunting minds of the interwebs, I'm Alexa, the resident ooky spooky girly, and today's topic is a curious one. Putting a message in a bottle was something I always thought about doing growing up, but never really got around to it. Maybe someday I will, just to see what happens. Let me know in the comments if that's something you've ever tried and what came of it. And here are the top 5 haunting messages found in bottles. Number 5, Auschwitz. So technically I never said these messages in a bottle had to be found at sea today, and this one certainly wasn't. Not everyone who feels the need to cast a message off into the universe in a bottle, has a body of water available to them. There are some bottles with messages found not only on seashores, but on land. Workers demolishing the wall of a building outside of the Yahtzee Auschwitz-Birkenau camp found a message in a bottle written by prisoners dated to September 9th of 1944. The names of 7 prisoners, mostly Polish Christians, although one was French and one was Jewish, were still legible on the note. Their Yahtzee imprinted camp numbers, hometowns, and the fact that they were all between 18 and 20 years of age can also be read. The bottle was buried in a concrete wall. The wall was in a building used as a warehouse by the Yahtzees, and more recently by a school located a few hundred meters from the actual camp. An Auschwitz museum spokesman said the authors of the note were young people who were trying to leave some trace of their existence behind them. The author was Bronislaw Jankowiak, a Catholic Pole who was sent to the camp in 1943 and fled to Sweden in 1945, where he passed in 1997. His handwriting was recognized by a friend and by his daughter, Irene of Sweden. Another prisoner listed on the note, Karol Czekalski, survived at the time of the discovery, lived in his hometown of Lodz in central Poland, according to Auschwitz museum officials. And it was reported that another one of those named, Wacław Sobczak, 84, is living in Rapchin in western Poland. But possibly the most interesting name on the list, and the one who sheds the most light on its background, is that of Albert Vacide, 84, a Jewish man who lives in Marseille, France. Vacide stashed stolen marmalade for his 6 fellow prisoners in an Auschwitz bunker, and in exchange, the Christians gave the Jewish man their extra soup and included his name on their list. So a retired mason and clarinet player, he stated to the press that he was born in Turkey, arrived in France as an infant, and was picked up at age 18 by the Gestapo. He was then sent to a string of prisons and camps before landing at Drancy, a transit camp northeast of Paris, from where, 76,000 Jews were sent to concentration camps and only about 3,000 returned. The Christian Poles working on building sites while Vacide worked beneath them, securing a bunker. They would steal marmalade and other provisions during the day, give them to him for safekeeping, come at night to retrieve them, and as payment, they brought him some of their leftover soup. In April of 1945, 7 months after the list was written and hidden, the Yahtzees sensed impending defeat and forced Vacide and many others to walk without food for nearly 3 weeks to another camp. Number 4, the Titanic. So when the RMS Titanic first set sail in 1912, it was believed to be unsinkable, which is a phrase I know we all snicker at now. The ship's maiden voyage, a cross-Atlantic journey from England to America, appealed to the public not just because of the ship's impressive size, but also because of its extravagance. At approximately 882 feet long and 92 feet wide, the Titanic weighed more than 52,000 tons when fully, laden. The ship's first-class section boasted veranda cafes, a gym, a swimming pool, and luxurious Turkish baths. Hey, by all appearances, the Titanic was a dream come true. But sadly, 4 days after the ship had departed, it famously hit an iceberg and glug glug glug. The Titanic was, long thought to have sunk in one piece, and it wasn't until September 1st of 1985 that a Franco-American expedition, led by Jean-Louis Michel and Robert Ballard, succeeded in finding the wreck. The team discovered that the Titanic had in fact split apart, probably near or at the surface, before sinking to the seabed. The separated bow and stern sections lie about 1/3 of a mile apart in Titanic Canyon off of the coast of Newfoundland. They were located around 13 miles from the inaccurate coordinates given by Titanic's radio operators on the night of her sinking, and approximately 715 miles from Halifax, and, a little over 1,000 miles from New York. The 2 sections are surrounded by a debris field measuring approximately 5 by 3 miles, containing hundreds of thousands of items, such as pieces of the ship, or were ejected when the bow and stern impacted on the seafloor. Many artifacts from Titanic have been recovered from the seabed by the RMS Titanic Incorporated, which exhibits them in touring exhibitions around the world and in a permanent exhibition at the Luxor Las Vegas Hotel and Casino in Vegas. A number of other museum exhibit artifacts either, were donated by survivors or retrieved from the floating bodies of victims of the disaster. So obviously many folks have wondered over the years if any of the Titanic passengers had the time and presence of mind to write a note, find a bottle, and toss it into the Atlantic as the great ship was sinking. And hey, at least one person did, and who knows, there might be more bottles out in the ocean somewhere. A young Irish man named Jeremiah Burke was traveling with a cousin to join their family in Boston. He was off to start a new life and was very excited about the possibilities. So when the Titanic began to sink and he realized out. That was the end. He managed to write out a note. Before his departure from Ireland, his mother had given him a small bottle of holy water, so in his last moments, he put his note into that bottle and cast it out into the sea. His note read, "From Titanic, goodbye all, Burke of Glanmire, Cork." Sadly, both Burke and his cousin perished in the sinking, and his message washed ashore in the bottle a year later, just a few miles from his home. Nowadays, the note is part of the Titanic exhibition in the Cobb Heritage Centre in Ireland. Number 3, a curse in a bottle. So now for something completely different. Well, the last 2 entries for today were full of history and, very heartstring pulling-esque, and also full of detail. This one isn't. While strolling along the beach at Oceanside, California, Reddit user Maria K13 stumbled across a message in a jar that creeped her right out. The jar was full of a strange pink liquid, which when drained revealed a folded piece of paper tied with black ribbon. After unfolding the paper, Mariah realized it was actually a washed out photo of a woman in pink. The photo had been pierced several times with pins, which may indicate that this was an attempt at casting a curse or hex. So, me being me, I did some research and I think it might have been a makeshift hex bottle. Historically, the witch's bottle contained something from whoever was believed to have cast the curse, be it urine, hair or nail clippings, or red thread from sprite traps. Later, witch bottles were filled with rosemary, needles, and pins, and red wine. Historically and currently, the bottle is then buried at the farthest corner of your property, beneath the house hearth, or placed in an inconspicuous spot in the house. It is believed that after being buried, the bottle captures evil, which is, impaled on the pins and needles, drowned by the wine, and sent away by the rosemary. Sometimes seawater or earth is also used. Other types of witch bottles may contain sand, stones, knotted threads, feathers, shells, herbs, flowers, salt, vinegar, oil, coins, or ashes. And yet another variation is within the disposal of the bottle. Some witches' bottles were thrown into a fire, and when they exploded, the spell was broken. It is believed that after being buried, the bottle captures evil, which is impaled on the pins and needles, drowned by the wine, and sent away by the rosemary. And sometimes seawater or earth is used instead. Other types of witch bottles may contain sand, stones, knotted threads, feathers, shells, herbs, flowers, salt, vinegar, oil, coins, or ashes. And another variation is within the disposal of the bottle. Some witches' bottles are thrown into a fire, and when they explode, the spell is broken, or the witch is supposedly killed. Now, the witch bottle is believed to be active as long as the bottle remained hidden and unbroken. People went to a lot of trouble to hide their witch bottles. Those buried under fireplaces have been found only after the rest of the building has been torn down or otherwise disappeared. The origins of this tradition have been dated at least to the 16th century, but are still in practice today, which leads to my theory on what that bottle was. Number 2, the LZ-54 bottle. The German Zeppelin L-19, also known as the LZ-54, was returning home from a kaboom mission in the UK when it crashed into the North Sea in February of 1916. A British trawler called King Stephen found the 16-man crew in the water but refused to help, and they ultimately drowned. The incident would have remained unknown if one of the crewmen hadn't written it in a note he put in a bottle and set loose in the ocean. And technically the bottle contained 2 notes. The first was written by the captain, Otto Lowe, who wrote, "February 2, towards 1 p.m. will apparently be our last hour." Honestly, that could be great inspiration for a horror movie. The second, which provided an account of the incident, was written by an unidentified crew member and stated, "My greetings to my wife and child. An English trawler was here and refused to take us on board. She was the King Stephen and hailed from Grimsby." The bottle washed up on the shores of Sweden 6 months later, and Germany originally used the note for propaganda. But the British media countered and reported that the captain of the King Stephen refused to help the German crews over fears that they might seize the ship. And the Bishop of London added fuel to the fire when he said the actions of the British crew were understandable. An unimpressed German newspaper said the bishop acted less as an apostle of Christian charity than as a jingoistic hate-monger. For reference, jingoistic means extreme patriotism. So in modern day, think of someone dressed in an American flag refusing to help someone because it was anti-American. And if that sounds stupid, well, it's because it is. Before the bottle was found, the King Stephen was sunk by a German U-boat, and its crew was rescued by the Germans. And they were held prisoners of war until, 1918, when they were eventually returned to Britain. So yes, it's worth being a little weary, and historically it might have been better to be safe than sorry, so I'm not going to judge based off of today's world standards and practices. Number 1, the Lusitania. The RMS Lusitania was sunk off the coast of Ireland by the German U-boat U-20 on May 7th of 1915 during World War I. Now, before anyone asks, RMS stands for Royal Mail Ship. This is not in the same line as the Titanic, but they were direct competition. So this ship was a civilian ship that had been targeted by Germany on suspicion of transporting weapons to Britain. Germany had announced unrestricted warfare against British ships, and even paid for newspaper advertising, warning Americans against traveling on British ships, as they could be sunk without warning. This ship ship sadly left New York the day the first ads ran, so they completely missed the memo. And 2 explosions were heard on the ship the day it was sunk. The first was very clearly the torpedo, but the second remains a mystery. Germany said it was, kaboom devices cooking off. Nevertheless, whatever may have been the cause of the second explosion, 1,198 people died in the mishap, while 761 were rescued. As the Lusitania sank, an unidentified person wrote a note, but did not complete it before putting it in a bottle. The note reads, "Still on deck with a few people. The last boats have left. We are sinking fast. Some men near me are praying with a priest. The end is near. Maybe this note will..." It is believed that whoever wrote the note stopped midway to put it inside the bottle just before the ship went completely underwater, which is so sad. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I'm still debating what I would write in a bottle. Maybe I would just shove my business card in it and call it a day. I'm a bit of a lazy person at times. Subscribing if you aren't already, hitting the bell for more from us here at Top 5 Scary Videos, and I'll see y'all next time, you lovely spooky people. Well, if it's too short, we got plenty of bloopers. It is believed that after being and I'm still debating what I would write in a bottle. Maybe I just, shove my business card in it and call it a day. Come on, we were so close. One more minute, please. Well, that's a doozy. Maybe I would just shove my business card in it and call it a day. I'm a bit of a lazy person at times.